Hello and welcome to the Cabral House Call. I'm Stephen Cabral, board certified naturopathic doctor, and I'm excited today to take your questions on our Total Wellness Tuesdays Q&A. So the first question I got today was, should everyone take an omega-3? And which products do you recommend? So on today's episode of the Cabral Concept, I also covered this. I was talking about kind of some of my favorite omega-3s that I do use with the people that I do care for my Boston practice. But I want to get maybe a little bit more specific. So I think like any nutritional supplement, it's important to understand that nutritional supplements are used to supplement a healthy diet and also to rebalance the body in some way. Now, if you're eating the standard American diet, which, you kind of pay attention to the foods you're eating, but sometimes you're a little bit more liberal, it's almost no doubt that you should add an omega-3 to your diet because you're just going to be very high in omega-6s. It's unescapable, really, or inescapable. You cannot get away from the amount of omega-6s are in processed foods. They're even in healthy foods like nuts and certain oils. They're in a lot of grains. They're also in meat products and eggs and dairy and everything else that has been grain-fed. So if you're eating beef and that cow was fed soy, it was fed corn, it was fed some type of grain, you're going to get those omega-6s in the meats, and they're going to be very high. It might be even 20 to 1 in ratio. And again, we're looking for a ratio of less than 5 to 1. Ideally somewhere around maybe 2, 3 to 1, but certainly no more than 5. So, the simple answer always is, if you can afford it, and this isn't an expensive test in my opinion. I mean, they're all kind of expensive, but in my opinion, they're worth it too. This is your health we're talking about. Without your health, what else, really, what else do you have? So there's an omega-3 test that I definitely do recommend you do test for. Look at your omega-3 levels, see if you're deficient. Now the other thing is there are some people that you might not want to overload on omega-3s, and that's because they might be a little low on sterols. Like those are the people who might be, really low cholesterol base. They might be really prone to catabolism, and that means cell tissue breakdown. Those are the difference between kind of the hard fats in the cell membrane and the soft fats in the cell membrane. And more omegas or more soft fats, which is essentially what an oil is, as opposed to sterol, can make those cell membranes a little bit more flimsy. This is getting kind of a little technical into cell biology, but it does matter. Now, when the body's balanced, or even imbalanced the improper way, which is high cholesterol, high of all of those things, you do absolutely want to add in the omega-3s. But there's a small subsegment, like there is for all parts of the population, all supplements, that should not be taking omega-3s. Again, very far and few between. Some of those people, though, I can say this. If you have really high allergies, if you have real issues with histamines, a fish oil, especially some of the fermented fish oils out there, can drive your allergies crazy. So what I recommend for those people are trying to dampen those allergies with natural balancing methods, which I'll talk about more, as well as just starting out with a very small dosage. It might be a half a teaspoon of omega-3s. See how your body reacts. Do you need them? Most likely, yes. And the reason is this. Omega-3s, the reason why they're needed by most people is because they help to balance the immune system. They're one of those things, almost like an adaptogen. If the Th1 branch gets too high, it will help to dampen that and bring up the Th2 branch. Don't worry about what that means. All it means it's going to help balance that immune system out so they don't get wild autoimmune diseases and you don't get wild bouts of allergies or cancer or other things over here, which are more Th2 immune dominant in some cases. So do you need it? Most likely. It's going to be dosage dependent. Now, if you're just looking for a standard dose, the standard dose recommended and the best research is somewhere between 2 and 4 grams per day of total omega-3s. Those omega-3s typically come from DHA and EPA. And what you want to do is, if you have issues with digestion, take them during the meal, take them at dinner, take them midway through the meal, let them kind of move around with all of the food and kind of work with that digestion. So typically, if someone's not going to do the testing, I start them somewhere around 2 to 3 grams per day, and then they see how that works with kind of squelching, decreasing inflammation. But I'll tell you, a lot of people with joint pain, it's almost like it's a tremendous gift to them to begin reducing the inflammatory foods in their diet, like gluten, like dairy, like corn, soy, all of those, and then adding in omega-3. That alone, just that simple change, has really worked wonders in some of my clients' lives. So I hope that does help. Of course, we'll talk more about this in the future. All right, second question is inflammation and cardiovascular disease. Okay, so one of the reasons you take the omega-3 test in the first place is a lot of people are worried about cardiovascular disease. And they should be. I mean, this is a very serious thing. It's one of the leading causes of death in the world and also mainly in the United States. Here's the thing. We change diets. The FDA recommends this. We change our food pyramid. Nothing is changing the issues with cardiovascular disease after we started adding more processed foods into the diet. And that also goes for manufactured and processed oils as well. Here's the thing. If you have high cholesterol, it can be lowered. You can do it naturally. You do it not by looking at lowering cholesterol like a statin drug would do. You look at the underlying root causes of why you have high cholesterol in the first place. That's the most important. And there's a limited number of things it can really be. I personally never seen anyone in my practice that we couldn't rebalance their body and lower those cholesterol levels naturally. We're not talking about drug-based. We're not talking about anything like that. We're talking about rebalancing the body, and when the body gets healthy, it no longer has those high cholesterol levels. And yes, that includes genetic and familial hypercholesterolemia. It includes people with levels well above 300. It includes all of those people with LDL above 180. I've worked with everyone, and I can tell you there's always an underlying root cause. If you don't believe that, well, what's causing the high cholesterol in the first place? Of course there's a cause. There's always a cause. Even if everyone in your family, you have it, your father had it, your grandfather had it, yes, well, that just means that everyone in the family was suffering from this specific underlying root cause of why they had high cholesterol levels. So it's there. You just have to find it. Now, you run this omega-3 test, and the reason why this is important is because if you have cholesterol filling that artery right in here, okay? Well, cholesterol in and of itself isn't as big a deal. And now it's a big deal, but not that big a deal. I know that's controversial, and here's why. If your artery is like this and it's loaded with cholesterol and the blood really can't flow through that well, if you're not inflamed, you don't have high levels of CRP, you don't have high levels of homocysteine, and the inflammation in your body isn't that high, well, guess what? You take that artery, and as you need to, it expands, right? So the cholesterol still covers the outside, but it allows the blood to flow through. No issue, okay? It's an issue, of course, with the plaque, the cholesterol, all that breaks off, but if there's a lack of inflammation or there's no inflammation, that blood flows through no problem. It closes and opens, closes and opens. The problem is when there's inflammation and the blood's trying to push through and it can't open, that's a problem. So yes, everyone who has a family history of cardiovascular disease should do the omega-3 test. If you're over 40, you should do the omega-3 test. If you're just worried and you want to look at your inflammation profile, do the omega-3 test. It is such a phenomenal test, and it's just going to show you how low are you, how perfect are you. Every once in a while, I actually find a client that is getting enough omega-3s through the nutrition alone. Well, guess what? We have no need to actually recommend one of these nutritional supplements for them. And why don't we have a need? Because nutritional supplements are to supplement your body on what it's not getting, what it's deficient in, or what it has too much of when we're trying to take it out of the body. That's it. That's what these are for, and they work exceptionally well. And they're all backed by research. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. If your MD says, oh, there's no research behind that, well, there is. You just actually have to go about and look up the research. It's there. All right, don't get me fired up. The last question of the day is, so what fish are the best to eat, basically going to contain omega-3s, but have the least amount of mercury? So it's a really good question, excellent question, because again, you want to do the right thing and get more omega-3s in your diet naturally from fish and things like chia seed if you're vegetarian, or flax, or algae, or things like that. But you don't want to get the heavy loads of mercury and heavy metals with them. So that's totally understandable. What I would recommend is a couple of things. So one, I'm going to give you the fish. I'm going to give you kind of a breakdown, and we'll try to list it in the show notes below so you can download it as well. But look at the fish that are lowest in mercury and try to eat those on a daily or every other day basis. Okay? And then you might want to do something like a hair tissue mineral analysis or a tox screen that looks for heavy metals. And what I would do is I would run that probably like 3 or 4 months after you increase fish in your diet and actually see if mercury levels go up. or not. I'm going to give you the list, and this should allow you to be okay. So what I have here is a nice little card. We give it to all of our wellness clients. Okay. And what it does is it has a column here for low, a column here for medium, and a column here for high. We'll try to recreate this for you, put in a nice little PDF, and you can just keep it on your phone. Okay. So some of the more popular ones are this. So cod, clams, crab, crawfish, flounder, haddock, herring, mackerel, oysters, pollock, salmon, scallops, sardines, shrimp, sole, squid, tilapia, trout, sorry, and whitefish. That was the last one. So these are common ones. There are more like perch. If you eat that, then that's okay as well. Again, we'll get the full list linked up. But so those would be okay, what we're told on basically a daily basis. And again, it's going to depend on your body's ability to detoxify as well. This is subjective from person to person. But I feel comfortable saying that I'd rather have you eating some of these more wild, lower mercury fish than loading up on, grain-fed beef or something like that. I certainly think that's a much better idea. Okay, so what has medium levels? Bass, cod, halibut, lobster, mahi-mahi, monkfish, snapper, tuna, and that's about it. So those are the medium. And those I could say on a weekly basis to every other week basis. So 2 to 4 times a month, you can feel pretty comfortable eating those. Unless you already have your mercury levels tested and you're already high, and then of course you would want to eliminate those until you lower your mercury levels through natural methods, of course. And then what would be high? Well, bluefish, grouper, mackerel, marlin, sea bass, shark, swordfish, tilefish, canned tuna, ahi, yellowfin. Those would all be on the higher side and also very overfished. So not great for the environment in the first place, and then also very high in mercury. So you kind of saw tuna on there twice. The lower mercury one would be canned chunk light. There's another brand on skipjack. I'd have to look up if that's a reputable brand or not. And then the canned albacore would be the higher mercury kind. So you can actually find some mercury, let's say right on the package, low mercury. That's a much safer bet. But here's the thing. It also goes by what nature is. The larger the fish, typically, not always, but typically, it's going to be higher in mercury. So the smaller the fish, the sardines and things like that, they're going to be naturally lower in mercury. If you can eat those, if those are tolerated by your taste buds, I highly recommend those. Loaded in omega-3s, really loaded, just by getting sardines and a little bit of olive oil or however you prefer them. They actually, I'm part Portuguese, and it's a big Portuguese thing to have them in some spices and olive oil. And they can be really delicious fish. And you don't need to eat, a whole can of them. You can just have, maybe 3 or 4, and you put that with some great vegetables and, whatever you like for your lunch or dinner, and it can make a really satiating meal as well. So I hope those answered your questions today. Really enjoy taking your questions each and every day. And I will be back soon with another Cabral House Call.